In my final video in IML 202, I posed a scenario where characters in a film were actively being told what to do and how to think by a director, as if they're in a traditional Hollywood romance film, and the character ultimately tries to disobey the narrator's commands. One of the questions I tried to pose with this video was how much does this kind of traditional Hollywood style filmmaking affect our lives, and how much does it unconsciously affect the stories that we tell? I wanted to further test this question with my experience as Story Creator. Story Creator is an interactive tool designed to promote critical and creative storytelling. Using decks of cards, users will construct high-concept stories by deciding on characters, their gender, race, and background. So this is kind of less of a game and more of a tool storytellers can use to kind of test and try out their ideas to see how much they're following into common media tropes. When you start the game, you'll be presented with a few different card types: setting, character, descriptor, and action cards. Setting cards set the location of the story. You can use multiple setting cards to create different scenes if you wish. For example, if you wanted a story to take place in a city, you would just take the city setting card and place it down. Character cards are cards that the user fills in themselves with a name. Descriptor cards make up the identity of your character, which includes race, gender, occupation, and socioeconomic status. Action cards are essentially verbs that your characters will use to act out in the story. You simply take the card that you wish to use and lay them out on the table. First, you decide what setting your game wants to take place in. Then you take a character card, which you can name. After that, you construct the identity of your character by using the descriptor cards. You can give the character descriptions based on socioeconomic status or occupation, but you need to assign them a race and gender. So, for example, I'll say that my character is a white male. I can then use an action card to set the opening scene. So let's say my character falls in love with another character, which you also decide. In this case, I'll say that my character falls in love with an Asian female. But we can now consider the scene complete, and once the scene is finished, you flip over your cards. So on these cards, there are different descriptions based on your story choices. For example, I made my character white, and as you can see, in modern Hollywood films, about 83% of all protagonists are white. And so if I take a look at my love interest, I see that Asians only make up around 5% of all characters in Hollywood films, but there's also history for portraying Asian women as an exotic sexual object. So if I wanted to make a more progressive story, I would probably want to swap out some of these cards. So as you can see, there are no real win or lose states. You should instead look at Story Creator as a way to help refine your story making process. The game has changed a lot since I first started working on it. Originally, it was created all with flashcards and post-it notes, and there was a set story structure that you had to follow, which was based on Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, which had 17 story stages. After some refinement and looking at similar models, including Dan Harmon's 8-stage story circle, I originally had a 6-stage structure that users were forced to follow. And I also didn't have the requirement that users have to decide on an ethnicity or gender in the earlier versions of the game. What ended up happening is that no one ended up choosing any gender or ethnicities for any of their characters, and instead they kind of just internalized their decisions, which goes against the point of the game. So where are Story Creators going? So this analog form is definitely interesting, but I see this product being adapted onto a digital platform. I found there are a lot of restrictions, like writing countless action cards, which was very tedious work, but having a prototyping tool like this on a digital medium could help expand the format, and so it can become more customizable and allow for more complete stories. Ultimately, Story Creator needs to be expanded a little bit more, but at its core, it's kind of an experience that does help critical story making.